Madison Reed and Tyler Grant were the picture of quiet suburban happiness, young, in love, and planning their future in a cozy blue house on Mill Street. But 48 hours after they mysteriously vanished, a single, grainy Snapchat video would expose a hidden shadow in their lives. One watching, waiting, and ready to kill, Maple Ridge wasn't the kind of town where anything big ever happened. Nestled among the hills of eastern Pennsylvania, it was a place of quiet routines, where neighbors waved to each other from their front porches, where the biggest local drama was a high school football game, and where everyone left their doors unlocked at night. So, when Madison Reed and Tyler Grant moved into the little blue house at the end of Mill Street, it didn't cause much of a stir. They were young, polite, and kept mostly to themselves. Madison worked part-time at a nearby cafe and took online college classes. Tyler worked long hours at an auto repair shop and rarely ventured out. To most people in Maple Ridge, they were just another quiet couple trying to build a life together. But then came the silence. It started on a Sunday morning. Madison's mother, who lived in a neighboring town, had tried calling her daughter several times, only to get no answer. At first, she assumed Madison was just sleeping in. But as the day wore on and still no call back came, a thin thread of worry began to form. By Monday morning, that thread had turned into full-blown panic. Madison had always been the kind of person who responded quickly, especially to her mother. Ignoring a call was unlike her. By Monday afternoon, after multiple unanswered messages and calls to Tyler's phone as well, Madison's mother made the decision to drive out to the house herself. When she arrived, she found the little blue house quiet and undisturbed. The front porch light was still on, even though it was broad daylight. The car Madison and Tyler shared was parked in the driveway. The mailbox, slightly overflowing, had Saturday's newspaper still tucked inside. She knocked on the door, then rang the bell. No answer. Growing increasingly uneasy, she called the police and requested a wellness check. Officer Darren Wolf, a 17-year veteran of the Maple Ridge Police Department, was the first to arrive. He'd been called out for false alarms before, missing persons who turned out to be off camping, or couples who just wanted to get away for a weekend. But something about this scene didn't sit right with him. The unlocked front door, the car in the driveway, the absolute stillness inside. With the mother's consent, he entered the home. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The kitchen was tidy. A bowl of fruit sat untouched on the counter. 2 coffee mugs sat in the sink, and Madison's phone was plugged into the charger on the nightstand, still at 94%. But then he noticed something small, almost insignificant, a smear of what looked like dried blood on the hallway floor near the back of the house. He followed the faint trail, heart pounding harder with each step. The streak continued down the hallway, toward the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. Outside, everything looked normal. The small patch of lawn was freshly mowed. A rusted lawn chair lay tipped over in the grass. And beyond that, at the very back of the property was a shed. The kind of old, weathered wooden shed that creaked when the wind blew. Officer Wolf stepped outside, his eyes narrowing. Something wasn't right. The grass near the shed had been disturbed. A patch near the door looked darker, like the earth had been recently turned. He noted the shovel leaning against the shed's exterior and approached slowly. What he found inside shifted the case from a missing persons report to something far more sinister. A pair of muddy boots stood side by side, caked with dirt. Nearby, a second shovel was stained at the edge with what appeared to be dried blood. The air was heavy with a damp, coppery scent. He radioed for backup. Within hours, the entire backyard was sealed off with yellow tape. Forensic teams arrived. Drones hovered overhead. As night fell over Maple Ridge, the once quiet street filled with flashing red and blue lights. Neighbors gathered at a distance, murmuring, trying to understand what had happened behind the unassuming walls of the little blue house. All they knew for certain was this: Madison and Tyler were gone. And something terrible had happened in that backyard. The early morning air was thick with fog as investigators returned to the property on Mill Street. News of the discovery inside the shed had already spread throughout Maple Ridge like wildfire. By sunrise, the local news vans had arrived, parking along the curb with their antennas raised high. Curious onlookers lingered across the street, whispering and speculating. But no one knew for sure what had happened yet, not even the police. All they knew was that something had gone horribly wrong. Inside the backyard, crime scene tape stretched across the fence like a barrier between two realities. One ordinary, one unthinkable. Underneath a white tent near the shed, the ground had been partially excavated. As the forensic team worked in silence, removing layers of freshly turned soil, the picture became clearer and darker. Beneath the surface, wrapped in a blue plastic tarp weighed down with bricks, were the lifeless bodies of Madison Reed and Tyler Grant. The bodies were found lying side by side, both with visible gunshot wounds to the head. The medical examiner on site confirmed they had likely died sometime Saturday night, over 48 hours before anyone realized they were missing. There were no defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle. It was a clinical execution inside the shed. Nothing had been taken or hidden beyond the shovels and the boots. No weapon, no shell casings, no fingerprints. The shed, just like the house, had been scrubbed clean of any useful forensic evidence. It was chillingly methodical, almost like the killer had taken their time. Calm, careful, and unhurried. Detectives combed through the house again. Every drawer, every closet, every floorboard. Nothing had been stolen, no valuables were missing. Madison's purse still had cash in it. Tyler's wallet was on the kitchen counter with his ID inside. It wasn't a robbery, it wasn't a random break-in. Someone had come into the house, murdered them both, and then buried their bodies in the backyard, right under everyone's noses. The killer had walked in and out of that home like they belonged there. The lack of forced entry made investigators wonder if the victims had known their killer, maybe even trusted them. There were no signs of a break-in. The back door, which led to the sliding glass entry by the kitchen, had been unlocked. There were no broken windows, no kicked-in doors. Whoever had done this hadn't needed to force their way in. Police began canvassing the neighborhood. Several neighbors recalled hearing a loud pop on Saturday night, but they dismissed it as fireworks or someone backfiring a car. One man said he noticed the porch light staying on all weekend, but assumed the couple was just out of town. No one saw a car come or go. No one noticed anything unusual, except one elderly neighbor who, on Sunday morning, thought she saw someone in the backyard, wearing dark clothes and moving quickly behind the shed. She assumed it was Tyler working on something, and didn't think to mention it until detectives asked. Every minute that passed without answers made the case colder. Tyler had no criminal record. Madison had never been in trouble either. Their social lives were quiet. No recent arguments, no suspicious messages on their phones. Police checked their call logs, their texts, their bank statements. Nothing pointed to a motive. It was as if the killer had appeared out of nowhere and then vanished into thin air. As detectives huddled around the evidence board, frustration began to build. The precision of the crime suggested experience. This wasn't the work of someone who acted on impulse. It had the fingerprints, metaphorically speaking, of someone who had planned it in advance. But who? And why? Just when it seemed like the case was grinding to a standstill, one of the tech analysts flagged something odd. Madison's Snapchat account had been active late Saturday night, well after the time of death was estimated. It was a short, 10-second clip posted to her story and then quickly deleted. A blurry video, no caption, no explanation. Most people might have missed it, but someone had seen it, and they had saved it. That snap, buried in the chaos of social media noise, would soon become the case's turning point. Not a confession, not a witness, but a digital breadcrumb that hinted at a third presence in the house that night. Someone Madison never tagged. Someone she never mentioned. someone standing just behind her in the dark. The video was only 10 seconds long, grainy, poorly lit, and filmed in a hurry. Madison's Snapchat story, posted sometime around 11:56 p.m. on Saturday, had come and gone with little notice. Her account, now a digital ghost town, was inactive by the time police began digging into the details of her final hours. It was only after a friend came forward that detectives learned the snap had even existed. She had screen-recorded it by chance. Madison would sometimes send cryptic, artsy videos, moody clips of thunderstorms, her cat stalking shadows on the wall, flickers of late-night thoughts. Her friend thought this one was more of the same, until she watched it again. The video began in total darkness. Then the frame shifted quickly to the back porch. There was the unmistakable sound of footsteps on wooden planks. The phone moved erratically, catching the reflection in the sliding glass door. For just a split second, a silhouette came into view. It wasn't Madison, and it wasn't Tyler. It was someone else. Standing still behind her, half-shadowed in the glass, their face blurred, but one detail was clear. The back of their left hand bore a tattoo of a coiled snake wrapped around a dagger, a symbol that had once meant something dangerous in Maple Ridge. Detectives immediately recognized it. Years ago, a gang known locally as the Serpents had operated in the region, mostly in the cities, but with tentacles reaching into rural areas like Maple Ridge. Their activities were short-lived: drug trafficking, intimidation, occasional violence. But they made an impression. The snake and dagger tattoo was once a mark of loyalty among its members. Most had faded into obscurity after several arrests gutted the group, but the image in the video raised an unsettling question. Was someone trying to revive old grudges? Investigators began combing through the town's criminal archives. One name rose to the top quickly: Caleb Norris. Caleb had grown up just a few blocks from Madison. They'd once been inseparable. Friends since childhood, their relationship turned romantic in high school, but it ended badly. Very badly. After a string of volatile arguments and one particularly violent incident, Madison filed for a restraining order. Caleb had served a short sentence for assault and had since been released under parole with conditions that prohibited contact with Madison. Hacked to official records, he hadn't violated that order, at least not in any way that had drawn legal attention. But neighbors recalled seeing a man who looked a lot like Caleb driving past the couple's house late at night. One local even remembered spotting him sitting in his truck at a gas station 2 blocks away, staring out toward Mill Street. It didn't take long to find him. Caleb was living under a different name now, renting a room above a closed-down hardware store on the outskirts of town. He claimed he had turned his life around: new job, no trouble, clean slate. But the timing was too perfect and the shadows too long. Police brought him in for questioning. He denied any involvement, claimed he hadn't seen Madison in over a year, said he didn't even use Snapchat. But his nervous tics and shifting answers made detectives lean in harder. He obtained a warrant to search his residence. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a cluttered bachelor pad. Cans of soda, stacks of laundry, boxes of tools, but buried in a locked cabinet were items that made the investigators' blood run cold. A black hoodie, gloves stained with soil, and a handgun tucked in a box beneath old work boots. The serial number had been filed off, but it was clear this wasn't just a hunting relic. More importantly, when the hoodie was examined under forensic light, small blood splatters were found, tiny, almost invisible to the eye, and, in the closet, in a drawer shoved behind spare jeans, they found an envelope. Inside were printed photos of Madison and Tyler, taken from a distance, at the cafe, in their driveway, in their backyard. He had been watching them. But the real breakthrough came when forensics matched the handgun's caliber to the bullets found in Madison and Tyler's bodies. It wasn't definitive yet, but the pieces were aligning. The video, the tattoo, the hoodie, the gun Madison had unknowingly captured her killer in a mirror just moments before her death, the snap just another 10-second story in a sea of social media noise, was now the clearest clue they had. She hadn't said a word in it, but the image had spoken volumes, and it was only just beginning to unravel a motive far more obsessive and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The pieces were beginning to fit together, but what remained was the question no one could quite answer. Why? Why would Caleb Norris, 2 years removed from Madison's life, resurface now? And why in such a brutal, calculated way? Investigators dug deeper into Caleb's life, starting from the day he was released from prison. What they found painted a picture of a man who had never really moved on. Though his social media presence was minimal, his internet search history told another story, pages upon pages of searches related to Madison, her cafe's hours, her college schedule, even her new address. He had created burner accounts to follow her anonymously, lurking in the background of her digital life, watching her move on from afar. One investigator described it as a slow-burning obsession. While Madison had gone on with her life, started a new relationship, and carved out something peaceful with Tyler, Caleb had been simmering in resentment and anger. Every post, every smile, every moment she shared online seemed to add fuel to his internal fire. The idea that she had moved on with someone else, someone happy, stable, and nothing like him, was too much. The final piece of the psychological puzzle fell into place when police uncovered a hidden notebook during a second search of Caleb's apartment. The entries were unhinged, scribbled in ink and pencil, some pages torn, others so heavily marked they were almost unreadable. They read like a manifesto of control. He wrote about second chances, about betrayal, about revenge. In one entry, just a week before the murders, he wrote, "If I can't have peace, neither can they." He hadn't just wanted to scare Madison. He wanted to erase the life she had built without him. The theory was clear now. Caleb had been stalking them for weeks, possibly months. He had scoped out the house, watched their routines, waited for a night when the two of them were alone. The unlocked back door wasn't a coincidence. He had likely tried it on previous visits, testing for a moment of opportunity. When Saturday night came, he knew what to do. He entered silently, possibly through the back, while they were distracted or already asleep. The shots were quick and close range. There were no signs of a struggle, which meant he likely caught them off guard. Then, with an eerie calm, he wrapped their bodies, dragged them into the shed, and began digging. The effort he took to bury them in the backyard was disturbing in its patience. He didn't panic. He didn't flee. He stayed long enough to move heavy soil, pack it down, and clean up the obvious traces inside. He removed the shell casings, wiped down surfaces, and left the scene like a ghost. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have anticipated, was that Madison had captured his presence in that final, fleeting moment. Maybe she had heard something. Maybe she had a bad feeling. Whatever it was, she opened Snapchat, hit record, and captured the reflection of a nightmare. As the evidence mounted, Caleb's denials fell apart. The soil on his gloves matched the backyard. The partial print lifted from the shovel matched his right thumb. The blood on the hoodie came back with DNA belonging to Tyler, and though the gun's serial number was gone, ballistic testing confirmed it had fired the rounds that ended both lives. He was arrested on a rainy Thursday morning just 1 block from where Madison was buried. No resistance, no emotion, just silence, as if he had known this was coming all along. In the end, the motive wasn't money, it wasn't even hatred, it was ownership, a belief that Madison's life and death belonged to him, a belief nurtured in silence and secrecy until it erupted into violence. And it was only because of a single, accidental video, 10 seconds of grainy, chaotic footage, that the truth came to light. Without it, he might have vanished again. Without it, no one would have known who had walked into that house and turned it into a tomb. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, every corner occupied by journalists, neighbors, former classmates and strangers who had followed the chilling case since the story broke. People leaned forward, listening closely as the prosecution laid out the evidence, item by item, moment by moment. The silence in the room was heavy, the kind of silence that follows horror and waits for justice. Caleb Norris sat expressionless, eyes fixed ahead, unmoved as the charges were read. 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of burglary, 1 count of violating a protection order. His attorney argued diminished responsibility, attempted to raise doubt about the Snapchat video, and claimed the case relied too much on circumstantial evidence. But it was a losing battle. The jury had seen enough. The Snapchat video was shown frame by frame. The reflection, the tattoo, the timestamp. Forensic analysts testified about the gun, the gloves, the shovel, the tiny drops of blood on the hoodie, the digital footprint he left behind, Google searches, deleted photos, drafts of messages he never sent, spoke louder than any confession ever could. He hadn't just planned a murder, he had rehearsed it in his mind again and again, obsessively, relentlessly, until the lines between fantasy and reality blurred. When the guilty verdict was finally read, no sound came from Caleb. He didn't blink, he didn't flinch. Madison's mother sat quietly in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Behind her, Tyler's younger sister wept into a tissue. The courtroom was still, but the sense of release was palpable. After the trial, investigators opened up about the case, revealing just how close they had come to missing it all. If Madison's friend hadn't saved that Snapchat story, if she hadn't felt something was off about it, Caleb might have never been linked to the murders. The video had given them the lead they needed, the first crack in a wall he had tried so hard to seal shut. That one digital footprint had started the unraveling. But even with justice served, something darker lingered. Madison and Tyler's story became a cautionary tale about what we post, about who watches, and about how technology can both expose and conceal. Their deaths were shared in headlines, in podcasts, on TV specials, and social media platforms. Their lives, once so private, so ordinary, were now permanently etched into the internet. A memorial was held in Maple Ridge the following spring. Hundreds came. People who had never met the couple stood shoulder to shoulder, holding candles and wearing purple ribbons to honor Madison's favorite color. Tyler's co-workers spoke about his quiet kindness. Madison's professors remembered her curiosity and wit, but even as they celebrated the lives lost, the shadow of the crime loomed overhead. In the weeks that followed, Snapchat added new privacy warnings to its app, urging users to think twice about who views their stories. True crime forums dissected the case obsessively, pointing out how the reflection in the glass had gone unnoticed by so many. Some even speculated that Madison had sensed something. Maybe she knew Caleb was watching. Maybe she posted the video on purpose, as a way to leave behind a clue in case something happened. That theory, though unconfirmed, haunted everyone who heard it. Caleb was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He never spoke during the trial, never offered a reason, never apologized. When asked if he wanted to make a final statement, he simply shook his head. The judge called his silence cowardice masquerading as indifference. Now, years later, the little blue house at the end of Mill Street sits empty. No one has lived there since. The backyard remains untouched, a place of unspoken grief. But what remains strongest in people's minds isn't just the tragedy. It's the way a single snap, just 10 seconds long, shattered a mystery and brought a killer into the light.